Okay, we are streaming online live.
Thank you very much. Okay. So I'm just waiting for the mayor and just the mayor.
Chair Kobayashi,
Yes.
Mayor Martin just messaged he's struggling to get into the system. He thinks it's on his end, but he's continuing to try.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, it's I have quorum anyways. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes. So Councillor Day is here, but she's having problems with her internet tonight. So she's actually here, but you won't be able to see her. And Councillor Baxter is unable to attend the meeting tonight due to pressing family issues. So I am going to commence the meeting. It is 6:31. It's Committee of the Whole, Monday, January 17th. And before I start, I just would like to acknowledge with respect that we are meeting in the traditional territory of the Algonquin speaking people. And we are honored to have the opportunity to build strong working relationships with the people of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. And at this point in time, I will look on our consent agenda, and may I have a motion to approve the near-term agenda, the long-term agenda, that's 2.1, and 2.2, which is the agenda for tonight. Can I get a motion, please? Councillor Jensen, thank you very much. And any discussion? Seeing none, I will assume that everyone is unanimously in favor of it. Item 3.1, Committee of the Whole minutes from December 6th. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll look for a motion for approval of the minutes. Councillor Parkinson, thank you very much. Any discussion? Seeing none, I will again accept it as approved. Okay, public participation. We have 2 written submissions, one from the residents of Bonaparte Street and a written submission from the Royal Bay Homeowners Association. And I believe we have one speaker tonight. That is Ben Mycroft from Cablecraft Homes. And prior to letting Ben go on, I just want to remind everyone that comments pertaining to matters that have already been subject to a public hearing are prohibited at this meeting. Specifically, bylaw 1898, the cannabis retail at 1905 Souk Road, bylaw 1908, CD 31, 3554 Ryder Hedgeville, and bylaw 1912, CD 32, 791 Drummond Way. Is that Amanda, is it just the one speaker then, Ben Mycroft?
I believe so, but I don't know that he's online. If he is, if he can please unmute himself, that'd be great, because if he came in, he didn't come in with the proper name.
Chair.
Yes.
Ironically, I just got a text from Ben that said I can't find the call number to call in. So somebody needs to reach out to him to give him the number to call him, or you can tell it to me right now, and I can text it back.
I can just send it to him right now. Just a moment.
Sorry, Mayor Martin, this is Becky. I've just sent it already.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Sorry, Chair.
Okay, not a problem. Thanks a lot, Mayor Martin. I'll give him a minute here. If not, we'll proceed, and we can always come back.
He's just entered the meeting. So Ben, please go ahead.
Okay, Ben, you're on.
Yes, hi, Ben Mycroft here, representing Gablecraft Homes. Apologies, I was having trouble getting into the Zoom link there. And yeah, I'm just calling tonight to speak to the small lot design guidelines item, and I'm not sure if I should speak now or if I should speak to the item when it comes up.
Go ahead, Ben, right now, if you wish.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to express general support for the small lot design guidelines process that staff are undertaking. We have been consulted by Carrie Clark and the planning department and Dennis Carlson on this item. We are, generally supportive of the objectives to make sure that that the quality and the design of homes and adequate parking is addressed in a meaningful manner moving forward. Just our specific, we just want to make sure that specifically what we've been doing to date in the Meadow neighborhood in Latoria North at Royal Bay, from our perspective, has been working very well. We believe that there is quite adequate parking, and that in general, the design guidelines that are in place now have performed a good function and are working. So moving forward, we generally support the process. We would just like to make sure that we are consulted and have an opportunity to engage with staff further before this item moves forward into bylaw. And really that's my comments. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Okay.
On that note, I'm going to move on to new business, item 5.1, creating Habitat for Humanity Victoria, creating affordable home ownership opportunities in Colwood. And if I can get Ian Borhill, the Director of Community Planning, to introduce Ms. Meyer. Ian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So tonight we are hearing from two third parties who have offered to partner with the City of Colwood as we work towards renewing our attainable housing policy and associated programs. In both cases, staff are recommending that the Committee of the Whole consider directing staff to develop detailed options as to how those partnerships could look. Those would come forward in future reports if Council would like to see them. So tonight, our first speaker is Yolanda Mayer, CEO of Habitat for Humanity, who is outlining some options that Council could consider with respect to partnership opportunities here with Colwood. Yolanda?
I'm very sorry for incorrectly pronouncing your last name incorrectly, Yolanda. So, Mayor.
No problem. Yep. It's rhymes with Mayor Martin, Mayor. It's a Dutch name. Thank you so much to Council and staff and everyone for allowing Habitat for Humanity Victoria to have this opportunity to speak. I did prepare a briefing note, which I believe is part of your package. And what I was hoping to do today, perhaps with Amanda's help, I think is, I don't know if I can share my screen. So maybe we just want to run through the PowerPoint presentation if we can, because I don't see the option of sharing my screen. There we go. Thank you. So go ahead to the next slide. That's just a cover slide. So one of the things that I think a lot of people are very surprised about with Habitat is the income demographic that we serve. We are a home ownership model. And in order to be successful and to qualify for a mortgage, typically the incomes of the people we qualify are between 40 and 85,000. If you could just go back, I don't know if it's on auto moving forward. It's always funny when you're not the one driving, so just bear with me.
I'm sorry, it is on auto and I don't know how you make that stop.
Why don't you escape out of it and then we can just do it from the other. If we do it from here, then it shouldn't progress
Okay.
forward. Yeah, sorry, everyone. So what Habitat Victoria is attempting to do is to provide an equity solution to affordable home ownership. So unlike some of the other incredible affordable housing providers, we are an ownership model. And the idea there is that there is some equity sharing and wealth accumulation that can lead to a positive intergenerational change. You can go ahead to the next slide. The other thing that people are sometimes surprised about, I think a lot of people know that Habitat is a developer and a builder, but a lot of people don't know that we're also the lender. And historically, Habitat has been the 100% loan to value lender. And what makes the home purchase affordable in our historical model is that there's no down payment required and that the lending is interest free. So that means that payments are going straight towards the principal and none towards interest historically. And also that we do an annual review of income to ensure that the payments for property taxes, for strata fees if they're applicable, and for the mortgage payments don't exceed 30% of the gross household income. And finally, what Habitat offers a municipality such as yours is that we can manage that housing inventory through time. We place an option to purchase and right of first refusal on all of our homes to ensure that they're retained in the housing inventory, for 80 years or in perpetuity, as long as Habitat is managing that inventory. Okay, next slide. What I don't think will come as a surprise to any of you is that in this market, Habitat for Humanity is very challenged, with land being the single greatest impediment. Quite frankly, as a charity, even through the success of our fundraising and our restore, we're not able to purchase land at market values. We simply can't compete. And so in 2018, when we found that there really was no more land being donated from any level of government, rather than trying to compete with developers for the limited multifamily land that was available, we pivoted and decided that the best course forward was to partner with municipalities and developers to deliver the affordable housing opportunities that they themselves could not deliver on their own. So how that would work is that a municipality would require, when a rezoning is presented and a project is discussed, okay, let's see what it looks like to have an affordable housing component. What is the nature of what you're doing? Obviously, if someone's delivering affordable rental, we're not the appropriate partner. But if someone is doing a small lot subdivision, if somebody is doing a multifamily sort of ground level density project, or even if someone's looking at condos, Habitat is a natural partner to have some portion of them be part of our program and not open market homes. If you want to go to the next slide. So what we can do then is ensure with a developer that we purchase the home from them at a fixed cost, usually covering the cost. There's a cost recovery there, excluding the value of the land. And then Habitat manages the selection of the families and sells the homes, and then also monitors that inventory over time. So a developer doesn't need to worry about or have any further role. And then it's the same with the municipality. The municipality works with us to draft the affordable housing agreement or the restrictive covenant that's placed on there that defines the value of the homes and who qualified buyers are. And then Habitat manages that inventory by selecting families that meet with that program criteria. And again, I've mentioned that we register an option to purchase and right of first refusal, which ensures that Habitat will step in, reacquire inventory when homeowners want to leave, and then sell it to the next qualified family. Next slide. If you want to go ahead to the next one. I thought what I could do to help contextualize it a little bit is talk about some of the projects that Habitat has done in partnership with other municipalities and developers. So in 2018, we did one in partnership with Central Saanich, where in lieu of other amenity fees that they would have collected, they accepted the donation to Habitat for Humanity on behalf of the developer. And so one lot out of 17 lots, fully serviced lot, was donated to Habitat. And then in this particular instance, we turned around and contracted that developer to build the unit at cost plus a modest management fee. And that way the home was integrated into all of the other homes built by the same developer. And it meant the concurrent delivery of market housing with the affordable housing. And really the only difference was the lending and how that home was affordable to that particular family. Next slide. The same thing happened in 2020, another 17-unit, coincidentally, small lot subdivision in central Saanich. Habitat was the recipient of a service donated lot as part of that redevelopment. And we then contracted the developer to build the unit on our behalf at a cost plus structure. And then next slide. This one is a little bit different. In this particular instance, when this project hit the development permit stage, the two projects were severed. So you had a developer who was sitting on a land assembly, wanted to build 17, I don't know what's magical about the number 17, but there's something magical about it, 17 market homes, single family homes, and then donated the lot to us, a service lot, and then we became the prime in this particular situation and built out a 10-unit project ourselves, which we completed earlier this year. This is the largest project that we've done. And we're very proud of how it turned out. And I should note that were anyone on council interested, we would be happy to take you on a tour. What we did here was a mix of units. And you can go on to the next slide, just to service a range of families from 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and 4 bedrooms. This is our build history. We've built 34 homes, and we'd love to see that double in the next couple of years. And as you can see, we've not built on the West Shore and we haven't built in Culvert. And I know that everyone on my team is really excited to see that happen. Next slide. I'm reaching the end of my presentation. There's a video that sometimes we play, which doesn't work very well in this format, I understand. So I believe you have this presentation in your packages, and I do encourage you to use the links that are here, and you'll see a couple of videos that just give you a sense of what the experience is like for our families, the key ceremonies, and just the real coming together and the life-changing experience that is had when a family enters into a Habitat home. And that's it from me, unless there are any questions.
I'll open the floor up to committee of the whole. Any questions for Yolanda? I don't see. 4 participants have raised hands. There's so many people on this, I don't know who's got their hand up here. Hold on here a sec. Okay, Councillor, well, I'll just do it in order that I see it here. Councillor Day.
Thank you, Yolanda, for your presentation. I think I last heard a presentation from Habitat. It's probably more than 10 years now. And one of the issues that I have trouble with is the fact that, at least previously, there was no opportunity to work with Habitat for accessibility. Has anything changed on that front?
Well, I'm sad to hear that, and I would certainly argue that things have changed. 2 of the units that were part of our 10 units in North Saanich are fully accessible. They have internal elevators. All of the features are accessible. We worked with an accessibility advisor that was accredited through the Rick Hansen Foundation. So Habitat is absolutely receptive to building homes that are accessible. In fact, we are still trying to find a family for one of the accessible units in North Saanich. So if you're aware of someone who might qualify, we'd love to hear from them.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 things. I think you covered one, Yolanda. I did make a note to myself in reading this afternoon whether you guys would manage some rentals for a community, but I believe you answered that. And then the question I have, what do you do for an apartment building? Everything looks like it's freehold here, but you know, if a developer wanted to donate 2 or 3 units in a big apartment block, how would you manage that, or do you?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Because we're not a rental model, but we're a home ownership model, in a condominium complex, it could absolutely work. We would just have to come to a price point that would be tenable for Habitat to acquire the unit. And then when we sell it, it would be like any other strata owner. The purchaser would become the strata member, and Habitat would become a lender and sit in the background with the option to reacquire it if and when that family decided to move on. The rental scenario is not one typically that Habitat enters into except on a temporary basis when families are qualifying for our program and intend to then purchase that home. We feel that other nonprofit affordable housing providers are probably better suited to manage rental.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Councillor Parkinson.
A couple of questions, if I could, Yolanda. Firstly, of the 34 homes that you built, what's the turnover rate? How long do people typically stay? Do most people sort of move on up, or are they sort of staying there for life? And secondly, I noticed some of the slides I was looking at looked like maybe there wasn't a garage in some of them, and you talked about 1.5 bath homes. So what would be sort of the size and amenities, if you want to call them that, compared to the other units in the development that you're working with, or typical what's built on small lots out here in Culvert?
Can you just remind me of the first question again? Sorry.
Just what's the turnover rate? How many of the people, the 34 units, have people sort of progressed on into market housing?
Yeah, it really differs. I think that the model that we lend under, and even now it's continuing to evolve. So I would argue that the vast majority of people who originally purchased their home in 2000, 2001, when Habitat built its first homes, remain in those homes. That was a highly preferential deal for families. They only ever had to repay a first mortgage, and the second was forgivable. When I started working with Habitat in 2010, that model changed and people had to purchase their homes at their full fair market value with no forgiveness of any kind on any of the mortgage balance. And since then, I would say that the vast majority of the families remain in their homes for a fairly lengthy period of time. The turnover is maybe one home every couple of years, 3-4 years. And what we found there is it's typically as the result of a marital split, where I think, as in the real world, the non-Habitat world, neither party can persist on their own. Or, in some instances, families have simply moved away. But out of the 34, I would say that probably the high 20s remain in the home.
Okay, thank you.
And then you had a second question regarding the average home size depends on the number of units, but let's say it's about 900 square feet or so for a 2-bedroom, and let's say 1,200-ish, 13 for a 3-bedroom, and then the 4-bedroom is slightly larger. We do not typically build enclosed garages. Some of the homes, because of the form and character of the development that they're built in, might have them, but more typically we would have a carport in that scenario. And then we typically have sort of surface parking to make it more affordable. So we consider it to be entry-level market housing. And so the kind of features and the finishings tend to reflect that. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, yeah. And it gives myself and the rest of us, I think, food for thought as we get into our small lot design guidelines. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
Thanks, Jeff.
Stuart. Mayor Martin.
Thank you. Can you, the units that have been sold, how does Habitat for Humanity have expectations around maintenance? Because I'm just thinking about, for example, I understand that it's home ownership, but somebody could let that home just run down, and then Habitat for Humanity has right of first refusal. So will you refuse a unit if it's incredibly badly maintained, or will you fix it up again to try and resell it? I'm just curious if you even experienced that yet.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think like any situation, when you have homeowners, you have the range of people in terms of their home maintenance, but we do have provisions in our mortgage that allows us to act if we see that there's neglect, number one, and we can compel a repair. And if they refuse to do it themselves, we can act on their behalf and then reduce their equity position as a result. The option to purchase has what we call protected disbursements. So if the home has more than wear and tear and we need to go in and refurbish it in some way that's beyond what would be reasonable, that again can come out of the equity that's been accrued before we do a payout. And absolutely, I think in the vast majority of circumstances, Habitat would reacquire the unit and fix it up, because the land value alone is so out of reach that we probably wouldn't be able to recreate that unit otherwise. So we definitely have some provisions, both through our option to purchase that's registered and through the mortgage, to take action if we feel that a home is being neglected or we've reacquired one and we want to repurpose it.
Great, thank you. My second question is just around taxation. Does Habitat for Humanity expect any taxation breaks on these specific units on the annual cost? So for example, once the land ownership is in there, or the person, excuse me, is in the building, they're just paying taxes like everybody else, or is there an expectation that there's a reduced tax rate?
Well, the expectation is that they're a taxpayer like any other taxpayer in your community, and there's no discount or break expected for that reason. However, Habitat does have an interest in creating a permanent inventory of affordable housing for this income demographic. So what we're doing is modeling ourselves after the Whistler Housing Authority and Tofino Authority, who are trying to implement an alternative market value for their homes. So right now, North Saanich has an affordable housing covenant, which restricts who can buy the units and what a qualified purchaser is, but not what we can sell them for. And it is our hope and wish that we would work with you to come up with an affordable housing agreement that would dictate an alternative market value for these homes below open market conditions, so that they could be permanently transacted. I talk about it a little bit like a deconstructed land trust, where sitting on the title of the property rather than on a larger together piece of land is a restriction on the value forevermore, and that they will transact in this alternative value and buy and sold, and they'll also have a fixed rate of appreciation. And I bring that up because that would effectively reduce the property taxes, not because there's a special expectation that Habitat families should pay less, but because their homes would not be worth the same as their neighbors' homes, which are not encumbered in the same way. Does that make sense to everyone?
It made sense to me. So if it made sense to me, I guarantee you the rest of the council understood it.
Okay. Yeah, we're really excited about this new model. We really feel it's the way to go. It's so hard fought to create this inventory that we really want to preserve it so that a certain demographic, income demographic in your community can experience home ownership. I mean, recently you would have all seen that the average home value is over $1.3 million in our region. And it's becoming more and more unattainable for families. And we just really want to make sure that if we work with Colwood to create this inventory, that everyone feels it will remain affordable to the income demographic we serve.
Thank you. Chair, if you're ready for it, I'm happy to move the staff recommendation.
I just had one question. Then I'll come back to you, Mayor Martin. Yolanda, thank you very much for the presentation. And I think what you do with Habitat for Humanity is just fantastic. It's needed in our community. It's needed in our world. So I'd like to thank you for that. My question is pertains to, I understand what you just said about Habitat decides who gets into these homes. Is there like a lineup, and how do you, who is there a priority? Like, is it first come, first serve? How does that work, the selection process, quickly?
Yeah, very quickly, I ask everyone maybe to go to our website and just have a look at the expression of interest page. So it starts when we're going to build. The team will make a presentation in the community about the criteria. There are 3 key criteria: living in need of affordable housing, the ability to pay the interest-free mortgage, and a willingness to partner with us. Every family has to contribute 500 hours of volunteer service. And so if you're interested in becoming a Habitat family, you go to our website, you submit an expression of interest, and there you will see, you know, the criteria, the income ranges, the family configurations, those sorts of things that are, and if you meet all those criteria, then our Director of Family Services reaches out and we do a deep dive. It's a pretty comprehensive intake process, as it would be for any mortgage. And we're partnering now with Van City, who has their own process. So it's always interesting. On the one hand, there's a huge demand, but I'll be honest, it's not easy to qualify for our program because of the tension that exists between being low income to fit within our charitable mandate, but having sufficient income and no debt in order to meet the obligations of qualifying for the mortgage. So many people are interested, but it's not like a lineup out the door because it's a pretty rigorous program, which is quite different than affordable rental.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll go to Mayor Martin for the motion then, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I will move the staff motion that that committee of the whole consider recommending to council that council direct staff to compile a report outlining detailed options for the partnering of the City of Colwood and Habitat for Humanity to increase access to affordable housing.
Okay, thanks very much, Mayor. Discussion, Councillor Parkinson.
Yeah, council will recall that at the last meeting, Councillor Baxter made a notice of motion to have a workshop on what the city could be doing in the way of affordable housing, which obviously this would fall right in the sweet spot of that, as would other thoughts. And I'm just wondering if, before we send people out to write a report on this, if we shouldn't have the workshop first and then either narrow down the options or pursue whichever ones we like or seem to make sense at that time. I just wonder about how much we're sending away our staff to do and if it's the most productive approach. That's all, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I would just like to add what Councillor Parkinson said to the motion. So I'm just wondering if Mayor Martin would be willing to entertain that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, you got her there, Councillor Day.
Thank you.
And Ian, you want to make a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So members of committee have read staff's mind tonight, and we would very much try to incorporate the outputs of this meeting into any future workshop that was held on council's behalf as discussed.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian. So, do we have an amended motion, a friendly amended motion, or do we have a motion with an amendment? That's my question. Amanda? Go ahead, Mayor Martin.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I'm happy for it to sit as the main motion, the addition that we added.
Okay, perfect. Okay, seeing no other hands, I will put it to vote. Any opposed to the motion? Seeing none, carried. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Yolanda.
Thank you.
Okay, going to move on to 5.2. I'll get Ian to introduce our next speaker, Community Social Planning Council, Colwood Rent Bank and Housing Stability Project. Ian? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So our next speaker will be presenting an idea that has taken off across the region and in BC. The idea is that Colwood could create a rent bank that would assist renters who are struggling to meet rents. So tonight, Diana Gibson, Executive Director of the Social Planning Council, will be speaking more about this idea. And once again, staff are recommending that committee consider a recommendation to council that staff come back with detailed options in a future report. With that, I'd like to pass it over to Diana.
Hi, thank you for having me this evening. Thank you for having me this evening. It's really great to be here. Do you want me to share my screen, or do you guys have a PowerPoint to share? Okay. All right. Can you see the Colwood Rent Bank presentation?
Yes, we can. Thank you very much.
Perfect. I'm going to speak tonight about the idea of developing a Culvert rent bank and collaborating with you around housing and homelessness prevention through supporting individuals who are at risk of homelessness. Just a little bit about who the Planning Council is for folks who aren't familiar with us. We've been operating in the region for over 85 years, actually, as a regional voice for nonprofits working with anti-poverty and social issues. And we bring people together, we convene, we do participatory action research, things like the point in time count, which we've done every 2 years. And we do regional planning processes and support regions and municipalities like Colwood with things like homelessness and housing. But we've also been working with Colwood around green, the prosperity planning and new prosperity index and metrics for equity and diversity. So lots of different types of social planning. Some of the programs we run regionally are the Low Income Transit Assistance Program. So we provide bus passes to individuals that are in low income that are accessing programs and services across the region. And we do the point in time count and we support with evaluation and monitoring. Some of our housing programs include housing insecurity, done research and grants programs, regional housing needs assessments, and best practices in homelessness prevention. So our goals today is to share information about what a rent bank is, build on our partnership with Colwood, and talk a little bit about longer-term sustainability for homelessness prevention and the rent bank. There's a lot of text on this, so I'll just briefly give you highlights from what this talks about. What a rent bank is. When we did the point in time count, we found that individuals in homelessness often were there because of an initial one-time crisis that then put them into homelessness, and they become all sorts of challenges they've had in life have become very exacerbated once in homelessness. And if we can bridge people through that one-time crisis, often we can prevent homelessness and save a lot of regional resources. And these crises really ranged. We've been working with this population for a few years now, and they really range from a workplace injury to a child being assessed with autism to a domestic violence or abuse situation, just really broad range of one-time crises. And a lot of them have been losing their jobs through COVID and then got into arrears in their rent, fell behind, and are having trouble getting back above water. So what a rent bank does is really helps individuals to get back above water and bridge through that crisis to get their feet back under them. So it's financial assistance in the form of a loan or a non-repayable grant that's given to the households that are assessed to be at risk, either rent arrears or utility arrears that could benefit from the program. There's a lengthy process around application. We try to keep it as low barrier as possible while making sure that we're doing our due diligence around the household's need. So there's a portal that is applied through BC Rent Bank. There's rent banks in all the regions across the province now through the BC Rent Bank portal, and we work with a case management system, but we have case managers here in Victoria in our office that respond to inquiries that are coming through the portal, or they can be phoned directly and they work with individuals in the region that are at risk of homelessness, and not just with the rent or loan and financial assistance, but also with service navigation and ensuring that the households access as many of the programs as they can. So if it's a elderly individual, helping to ensure that they're accessing things like SAFER, that if there are other long-term grants programs that they're accessing them, if there's somebody eligible for disability, that we've ensured that they're accessing that program, and folks that can help them get onto disability, whatever the way to secure their household is, helping ensure that they've got that kind of support as well. So wraparound services in terms of case management, but really navigating them through that crisis. And generally, we don't work with households that are in long-term crisis. We're hoping to work with households that we're bridging them through crisis. And what the funds can be used for, there's a range, as I mentioned, rent arrears, overdue utilities, but also we can help with folks that maybe have found a place that's more affordable to move into, or if they're moving into housing and have not quite got enough for first month's rent or next month's rent. So some of these things that in addition to arrears, to keep them securely housed. And then there's a financial application process. So why this, as was mentioned by our last speaker, of course, everybody's very aware of the rise in assessments and property values and the challenges to affordability. And a third of the folks that have come through our rent bank have had children in this region and across the capital region. So it's households with and without children that are coming into this rent bank. 1 in 4 households in Colwood are renter households, and 20% are in housing need in that they spend more than 30% of their income on housing, and then 8.5 are in core housing need or extreme housing need. So that indicates that we do have households that could be at need of a program like this to bridge them through a crisis. What you see when a household is spending that much of their income on rent is that they don't have the cushion for a crisis. So this is where a rent bank really comes in, is that they're really living month to month to month. And so a one-time crisis can be enough to push them over the edge. And that's where a program like ours can really help. The other piece that's important is that the rent bank is a critical part of the puzzle in housing and homelessness. It's not, it's not a fix. We recognize that it's a support in a time of crisis and a small piece of the puzzle, and needs to be complemented by other strategies, of course, to address adequacy of incomes and housing affordability. Some other points about the rent bank that we launched a Greater Victoria Rent Bank in February 2021. We have a range of advisory committees from around the community, of individuals from around the community, from foundations like the United Way, local and regional governments, housing organizations, landlords, and we do work closely with landlords. And for Colwood context, this wouldn't just be standard sort of apartment rentals, but we recognize that for a lot of homeowners, the suite rentals are a critical part of affordability. And so when you have a tenant in a suite that has a one-time crisis, it impacts on the affordability for the homeowner as well, who often are heavily mortgaged and really need that income. So that would be part of the program for Colwood, would be to support tenants and renters across a diversity of rental types. When we did our pilot project in February through April of 2021, we bridged renters through a lot of crises. It was 70, the average tenant was spending about 70% of their income on housing. So what we're seeing is individuals who really have no cushion for a crisis. And as I mentioned, over a third were households with children. And that's a really quick, brief summary, but I'm really happy to answer questions and discuss it further.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Diana. If I can get you to unshare your presentation, and we'll start with Mayor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. As we've experienced it through COVID, and we've seen how the federal government was creative with some of their rental rent pay, basically what they did was they said to the landlord that the landlord had to take a 25% cut. Then the person had to pay 25, or the business owner had to pay 25%, and then the government paid the 50%. Is that a strategy at all long-term for this bank? I'm just curious. I'm asking, I'm not suggesting that that's a direction.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm aware of that program as commercial rents. We don't, the provincial rent bank program doesn't work with landlords in terms of any contribution. It really is a bridging of tenants through crisis. So okay. It doesn't, and it's not considered to be a long-term support to the, I think that federal program was for a longer term, and ours is sort of up to 3 months. It's quite short.
Okay, thank you. The second question I have for you is, other than through taxation, are there strategies on how you would top up that fund on a yearly basis? Or has that been the only way that the funds have been topped up?
Well, I think that the staff can speak a little bit more to creative financing that they thought about with Colwood, because I'm not as familiar with the revenue options, but different municipalities are using all sorts of different options for funding it. Right now, the good thing about Colwood contributing to this program is that the provincial government does match. So it's really helpful to have Colwood participate, and we'll be able to leverage additional funding from the provincial government rent bank program. And then we also can access the operating resources. So our case managers would be available to the Colwood rent bank And then we would designate any contributions from Colwood beyond operations that would go to loans or grants as specific to only Colwood residents. So we can ensure that it is Colwood residents that are benefiting specifically from some of that contribution, and we can leverage provincial resources for operating and case management. But some of the ways other funds are doing it, some of them are using Airbnb fees, some of them using improvement fees, and some of them it's general revenues. Some of them are out of their sustainable, their strategic grants programs. So it's a real range.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks. Ian, do you want to make a comment before I move on to Councillor Day?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, one of the ideas that we're interested in exploring is potentially using our Affordable Housing Reserve Fund. So that's developer contributions as a means to potentially fund a Colwood Rent Bank. So that's just one thing that we'd like to explore if council directed us to proceed.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Councillor Day?
Thank you. I guess my question was kind of half answered. I heard you telling us that the province matches the donations that you receive. What about the federal government? Do they participate?
Yeah, they haven't yet. They have in the form of the CRD manages some of the Reaching Home funds, and Reaching Home funds have been given 2 years in a row for a one-time grants program for a short period of time. And we've not had that renewed. It may be that there's grants that become available. So each year for the last 2 years, there has been a significant fund of grants available and operating funds available through the Reaching Home grants, but it has been one-time funding. So we don't yet have any commitment for the next fiscal from the federal Reaching Home funds, though we do have it from the provincial.
So does that mean that there have been households in Colwood that have had some assistance from your program in the last year?
Yeah, there have.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of thoughts. I see you talk about $340,000 in grants, and I just wonder, is this really just grants, or is it really loans? Like, does anybody have the ability to pay this back, or do they all just have to?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are working with, we have got a substantial, and I don't have the figure in front of me right now, but we do have a substantial amount out in loans now that we've been moving through. So that 350 was a COVID grants program. So it was specific rent arrears built up during COVID, where there was a period where landlords, there was an eviction prevention and individuals didn't have to pay. They couldn't be evicted for failure to pay rent. And a lot of households went into crisis with job loss at that first period of COVID and went into rent arrears, but there was no ability for them to pay those arrears off, as we saw with those household finances. So this program was designated for households that went into arrears. We worked with a whole bunch of landlords and identified who the households were that were at risk of eviction because they were in rent arrears, and we paid off some of those rent arrears to get the households back into a rent paying position. So that was a one-time COVID grant program. And they did do one follow-up program similarly to help sort of clear up some of that COVID rent arrears. But the loan program is separate, and we've been, and there it isn't quite as much because we're a bit more judicious around how much we give out in the loans, just to ensure that we're not setting households up for failure. And that's why it's really, we are looking to move forward with municipalities on a shared loan and grant program, because there are some households where we just know it's not going to be a loan, but it's a one-time crisis, and if we can bridge them with a grant, they're going to be well set up to be resilient moving forward. So right now we don't have committed grant funding. We do have committed loan funding from the provincial government, and they are seeking municipal matching.
Thank you. And I see the number is 71% on housing expenses. I mean, that just rots my socks, but it also makes me wonder, you know, if people are getting to that point before they need help, is 30% the right number, or you know, do you start to worry at 30%, or at some households you go, you know, you're going to be okay at 40% or 50%? So just hard to know where one should start this. Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's such a great question too. We really talk about that a lot because we're having to triage the households coming through around need and level of urgency. And that is one of the questions, is some of those households do have a little bit more room, even though they're above housing need, have enough income to be able to make it work. And so we're certainly seeing, if that's an average, at 70%. So, you know, folks are way over their head on rent, and in a lot of the households, and in a lot of them, they need to move and there just isn't anywhere to go. So we're bridging them for a period of time to try and find somewhere. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have right now, is helping them to find something more affordable.
Right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Chair. Doug, you're muted.
How many are contributing to this right now? And my last question has to do with time frame. So when I make an application, a person makes an application, how long does it take for you to turn it around and give approvals?
Yeah, well, so I'll do the time frame first because it's a quick answer. Whatever they need, like if sometimes we have a household come in and they already have a 10-day eviction notice, we'll prioritize those households and we'll reach out to those landlords and we'll try and negotiate some additional time, and we'll, you know, process the paperwork as quickly as we can. So we do definitely prioritize our households as they come in based on urgency, and we can move pretty quickly. We've had folks, you know, over the weekend quickly turning something around where there knows that where a landlord has said, no, there's no room for movement on this. So we'll get the payment into the hands of the landlord. It really depends on the situation of the household, but we do need to get that paperwork in place in order to do our due diligence on making sure we're responsible with the funds.
Okay.
And the other question in terms of contributions, we've had the city of Victoria has contributed, and so far the only regional municipality, and like I said, the CRD made some one-time contributions, but we are approaching all of the municipalities. Esquimalt has been sitting on the advisory committee as well, so we are going to be approaching every municipality. But what Victoria said is they'd like to set up something similar to the conversation we're having with you in Colwood, is something where it would be more Victoria specific. So they would contribute to the regional rent bank sort of operations and benefit from the case management, but they'd have their funds set aside for Victoria residents. So that's something that Colwood could do, given that there isn't participation by the other municipalities yet, is to make that contribution that helps to access the BC regional case management, but designate the loan and grant funding for Colwood.
So what you're saying is Victoria contributes to it, and Colwood citizens have benefited from it, correct? Is that what I heard? That's
yeah, so far.
Okay.
Well, the BC government, yeah, the only matching fund we had last year was Victoria, and the city of Victoria and the United Way were what leveraged us to access the provincial funding. So they did carry the majority of the load last year.
Wow, that's interesting. Okay, thank you very much, Diana. Can I get someone from committee to make the motion, please, for the staff motion? Councillor Jensen? Any discussion? Seeing no hands. All those opposed? Okay, motion is passed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Diana.
Thank you.
Okay, item 5.3, public art funding policy. Jill Collinson, I'm going to have you introduce and present this item. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair Kobayashi. So the report before you tonight seeks direction on implementation of a public art funding policy. Such a policy would establish a sustainable funding mechanism to support the city's commitment to public art, and collected monies would be allocated to the city's public art reserve fund. This reserve fund was established in 2011. Since that time, approximately $25,000 has been deposited, all of which was from a single rezoning application. And over that same time frame, we've spent roughly $5,000. So later this year, work will commence on a comprehensive public art policy to provide the basis for acquisition, installation, maintenance, and programming of art for the city. Prior to this policy work related to how and what Colwood should invest in for public art, it's necessary that funds are available to support such investment, hence the funding policy consideration predating the public art policy. So a variety of options are offered for your consideration tonight. and range from allocating a percentage of capital projects to various budget considerations, as well as development linked. So once direction is received, staff will bring forward a draft policy to council for consideration. Ian Borhill and myself are here if there's any questions.
Okay, thanks. Great summary, Jill. Comments, please. Questions, comments? Councillor Day.
Thank you. It just seems, given that we have only had very small contributions so far to this, that the proposal of 1% of the budget is perhaps quite high to get us started, when really kind of what we've had so far has been 0.1% of 1 year's budget in the kitty. And I do think that art is important, but is there any reason why we need to have a big fund right away, or is a smaller fund just as acceptable from a staff perspective?
Through the chair.
Yes.
So the 1% allocation is linked to capital project considerations and would gear down to 0.5% consideration or no consideration into the funding if it's a lesser capital project. So knowing that we have various capital projects coming up, the thought was to have it at the 1% rate, which is fairly common when it comes to paying into your own public art policy from a municipal perspective throughout the province.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jill. That was a great introduction. I believe there's a lot of merit here and that we should be doing something in this regard. The what and the how, I'd love to hear back some ideas from staff, but I do definitely want it to include item number 5, which is through our community amenity policy. And I know that the community amenity policy is currently being worked on by staff as well. So I'm hoping that something will flow through from that. Maybe you can tell us, Jill, do we need some kind of motion to that effect, or is this going to be organic through that community amenity update?
Again, through the chair. I would recommend a motion if you would like to have it included into the community amenity policy, with the caveat that it's typically organic through any community amenity policy update for it to be looked at. But I would recommend if there's specific clarity to offer.
Yeah. So I like all these ideas. Quite frankly, I think they all have some merit in their own portions, in their own way. But I do believe that with the construction that's going on in our community, I see value in leveraging some of the larger developments that are multi-unit dwellings, more so than single-family homes, in the sense that it's people that live in these densified communities that would likely benefit or have we would have the ability to build some projects, or we would have the space. And I think that those people would enjoy access to that. So I would like to move a motion, Mr. Chair, that staff look at option number 5, which is through the community amenity policy to help fund our public art. I can sit on that for a few minutes if you want. I'm not sure if someone else is going to craft something, or if you want to circle back.
I'll circle back to you if that's okay, Councillor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Your Worship, your Chair. Yeah, I do have some thoughts, and I have crafted a motion that I suspect Amanda can throw on the screen at the appropriate time. I guess my thinking was, yeah, we could take some percentage of capital projects and stuff, but that just adds more paperwork and bureaucracy, in my opinion. Probably not onerous, but I also noticed there is one that perhaps we could just include the 25,000 per annum in the budget. But the one I liked was when we talked about, if we have an operating surplus, perhaps we should slide some of this into public art. And we know that we have had operating surpluses typically since I've been on council. They're probably not going to happen every year. And that's why I thought that the thought of taking $50,000 when there was a large operating surplus meant that in the years where there wasn't, and there was no contribution to public art, probably balanced out. If we assume 50% of the time we're going to have an operating surplus greater than $50,000, it would be the same as doing 25,000 a year, except by taking it out of an operating surplus, we wouldn't be adding to the tax burden every year. It would just be when we come out ahead on the budget. So that was my thought. I would like to make the motion that you can see in front of you, if that's acceptable. And if anybody's got questions for me on this, I'm happy to try and explain it a little better.
Could I circle back to you, Councillor Parkins?
Darn right you can.
Okay, thank you. We take that off the screen, please. Thank you. I just want to open it up for any other discussion here before I look for motions here. I just have one comment myself. This is just personal to me. Jill, I was just wondering, was there any consultation at all with the public on this? For example, with some of the arts councils or societies that we have we consulted at all? Because what I believe is that there's a bigger picture issue here. It's not only public art. I mean, the whole arts and culture for the city of Colwood, we don't have a budget line item, standing budget line item, right? And so we seem to be piecemealing again here, and that's my concern right now. And what if the best way is what you're proposing, or what Councillor Parkinson is proposing, or what Councillor Jensen is proposing right now, it's hard to say which one I agree with right now, because we seem to be all over the place again. So we're only tackling one aspect of public art, of art, period, of arts and culture. So I guess that's my concern. I could see using these formulas, any one of these formulas, to address, all our needs right now for the city. I do think that that's a lot of a chunk of change right now for public art. $50,000, for example. I mean, that is a lot of money, and I'm just sort of scratching my head. How many more paintings can we do on walls of buildings, or flags that we're going to fly? I'm having a hard time with that one right now, when there's a bigger picture problem right now that we're not looking at this holistically. That's just my opinion, my humble opinion. And whether I can make a decision based on our discussion tonight just like that, I have to look at the bigger picture issue here. Jill, do you have any comments on that?
Mayor Kobayashi. So the consideration before us tonight is just related to the funding mechanism. We do recognize that the whole picture piece should, when it's related to public art specifically, should come through the development of a public art policy for the city. And so that would look at the how and the what and the where, and considerations about artist remuneration and maintenance considerations and all the things that should go into that. So this piece before us is just about how do we make sure we have enough money in the coffer for when this policy moves forward, for when it's endorsed in the future, so that we can act and implement the policy once we're ready for it. So as an example, for instance, maintenance of a public art piece typically takes up about 10% of your overall public art fund. So say you have $50,000 in your fund, 5,000 of that will be depleted every year, just strictly based on maintenance. And that's just a comment about how it's typically went. But for now, we're just looking at how do we make sure we have enough for when we're ready to go on the entirety of the public art piece.
That's good enough, Jill. Thank you. I do understand that now. Councillor Logan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm actually quite encouraged by this, and I appreciate Councillor Parkinson's motion, which I'll be supporting. I just want to say that it should negate perhaps a requirement from the city on developers to continue to contribute to a fund. And I really make a distinction between the arts and culture and art, so to speak. So arts and culture to me would be like programming and art shows, that sort of thing. What I'm looking at here is some sort of substantial public piece that's physical in nature, and that stuff's expensive. So if you, as you could probably appreciate, we see some costs of some of the pieces that the city of Victoria has done, talking about the hundreds of thousands of dollars. That really, it's a great investment because it draws attention, it creates a sense of place and all that jazz. So $50,000 is pretty, I wouldn't say it's rich, but cumulative in addition to some developer contributions could add up over a couple of years, and perhaps maybe depending on the surplus, maybe we have a bit of a sliding scale. So the larger the surplus, we can scale up the contribution perhaps in the future. But so thank you, Jill, for bringing this forward, and it's quite exciting. I'm looking forward to a statue of his worship eventually.
Thanks, Gordy. Councillor Jensen.
What do we do with the other 49,000?
Well, yeah, good point.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great discussion. I believe there's a motion up there. I didn't hear anyone second that. I would like to do that, Mr. Chair, and then I would like to circle back on the motion that I was going to present.
Are we specifically talking Councillor Parkinson's motion?
Yeah, so I'll second that. And
we don't need a seconder, actually.
Right, sorry. You can disregard that. And then when this vote is over, if you want to come back to me, that'd be great.
Okay, I will. Okay. Okay, so what we have on the table, can we put up Councillor Parkinson's motion again, please? Oops, Mayor Martin? You're muted.
Sorry, I was going to speak to the motion, so I'm happy to wait until the motion's made.
So that's the motion that has been made by Councillor Parkinson. Mayor Martin, you're up.
Thank you. First of all, I'm very supportive of the $50,000. It is a lot of money. I'm not stating that it isn't, but we invest. I'm not exactly sure the amount of dollars, but I know it's over $1 million a year at West Shore Park and Rec. So to be investing $50,000 a year into public art that will stay within the community and have a longevity, I think is really strong. My only concern about the motion, and I would like Mr. Earl or our CFO to comment, is I understand the vision behind it. My concern, however, is the more efficient and more effective we are as a city, the less of a surplus we should have, because our budgeting should be to the point that we don't have a surplus, and so I guess my worry is we're going to be punishing the arts fund by being more effective and efficient as a city. Am I misreading the motion? Mr. Earl or
Mr. Earl, would you like to take that one on?
Certainly, and through the chair to Mayor Martin, the city does endeavor to be accurate in its budgeting and its spending, and kind of the more precise that we can be, you are correct, the less likelihood that there will be a surplus in any given year. It's my experience over many municipal budgets, though, that there's a certain conservatism that comes into play with municipal managers and directors, such that they collectively err on the side of caution when it comes to budgets. And as a result, surpluses are the norm. And so notwithstanding our desire to be an efficient and effective organization, surpluses are the norm.
You're muted again, Mayor Martin.
My apologies. Thank you, Mr. Earl. So hearing what's been said, I will support the motion this evening, but to be honest, I would prefer it to be a line item within the budget, personally. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
Thank you. I'll support the motion here tonight because it's new and we're talking about how we're going to support arts in our community. But I really feel like this discussion actually belongs at a budget meeting because we are talking about our budget, really. When we're talking about a surplus, we're talking about our budget. And we had tried to stick to our guns when it comes to talking about spending money in Colwood in order to give everything equal weight, that we would discuss those things at budget. So I will happily support this motion here tonight, but I would like to support it to come forward as we look at all the numbers together so that we kind of keep in mind that we are juggling an awful lot of things in the city, and whether, you know, we are working with organizations to provide more affordable housing and stability for families, or we're working to make a beautiful and engaging community to participate in, that everything has an opportunity to get equal weight when it's considered. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your thoughtful thoughts on that, Councillor Day. Okay, seeing no other hands, I will call the question. Any of those opposed to Councillor Parkinson's motion on this item? Seeing none, motion is carried. Congratulations, Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Jensen, yes, I'm sorry. I told you I'd get back to you. So I'm circling it back to you.
Thanks for the circle. Just an additional motion that I would like to explore options on the community amenity side, as in item number 5 in your report, as an addition to our taxpayer contribution.
So sorry, Councillor Jensen, I missed out on that one. So the motion is?
Here we go. My motion is that we, as in the city, use or explore the community amenity policy as an avenue to further fund the community arts program. So this would be in addition to the previous motion.
Okay, understood.
The genesis for that is that I do know the community amenity policy for the city is under review right now. So I think the timing is good for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Discussion on Councillor Jensen's motion. Seeing none, I will call the question. Could I see a show of hands for those opposed to Councillor Jensen's motion? Don't see any, so motion is passed. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jill. Okay, going to move on to item 5.4, development variance permit 3438 Ryder Hedgedale Way. And Desiree, I understand, is going to be the presenter. Desiree?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so the next item in your agenda is development variance request for 3438 Ryder Hedgedale Way. The applicant is proposing a 13-unit townhome site and is requesting a relaxation to the land use bylaw to increase the maximum permitted height for retaining wall from 1.2 meters to 2.0 meters. And they're also requesting a reduction to the required front and interior side yard setbacks. So just for some context, the property is located in the Royal Bay Comprehensive Development 5 zone, and it's designated as neighborhood in the OCP. It is an irregularly shaped lot with an area of approximately 2,350 square meters. The lot is currently vacant and is bordered by Murray's Pond to the west and north, and as well as Ryder Hedge Digital Way to the east and Royal Bay Secondary School's parking lot to the south. So there's just a few sections in the land use bylaw here that apply to the committee's consideration for a variance request. The first section is the retaining wall bylaw, which sets the maximum height for a retaining wall at 1.2 meters and requires that a grade difference greater than 1.2 meters be retained using a series of retaining walls that are spaced at a minimum ratio of 1:1, height from the higher wall to the horizontal separation distance, as shown in the figure here. The applicant is proposing an overheight wall that's between 1.4 to 2 meters without terracing, and thus requires a variance. Also, the RBCD5 zone establishes the required front, side, and rear yard setbacks as shown in this table. So the applicant currently meets the rear yard setback, but is proposing a reduction to the front yard setback. This is a reduction from 3 meters to 1.5 meters, and also a reduction in the required side yard setback from 1.2 meters to 0.6 meters. So with respect to the retaining wall request, this is being made to accommodate a grade change between the property and the school's parking lot to the south. So the proposed wall is going to be internal to the development, and it won't be visible from the property to the south. Here's just a few cross sections showing the wall from various points along the south property line. So to ensure slope stability and safety, the applicant will be required to provide geotechnical considerations prior to the issuance of a development permit. The overheight retaining walls will also be designed by a professional engineer, and they'll require a separate building permit as well. So with respect to the setback requirements, the setback reductions will occur along the front and side yards as shown on this slide. It should be noted that the applicant has been working with the city since the summer to address challenges relating to site planning for an irregularly shaped lot. The applicant is here tonight to speak to their overall design rationale, but to provide some context, they had at one point considered moving Block A down to the south property line and ultimately decided to keep it in front of Murray's Pond in order to improve the relationship between those units and the park and provide better views for the residents. Also, in previous submissions, the applicant had contemplated moving Block C further inward so that they would not require setback reductions. However, after discussions with staff, the applicant has positioned it closer to the outer edge of the lot in order to improve the ability of fire trucks and service vehicles to come around that northwest corner of Block C. This, however, resulted in the requirement or the request for a variance to the front and side yard setbacks. With respect to this request, committee may wish to consider that the OCP supports setback reductions for irregularly shaped lots, and in cases where the setback reduction will improve an access route for emergency egress, as well as where it won't have impacts on, or it's likely not to have impacts on adjacent properties. So a notice sign was posted on the property in October 2021, and notice letters were mailed out to the residents within 75 meters in early January. And with respect to this application, council may wish to consider approving one of the following options. So option 1 is to approve the development variance permit. Option 2 is to defer it for further information, and option 3 is to deny the application. And as I mentioned, the applicant is also here tonight to present and can answer any questions that you may have. And I'm also available for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, so Desiree, so the applicant is presenting something right now then? Okay. I don't see him.
I'm here. I'm just trying to turn my video on.
Okay.
I'm just waiting for someone to allow me in with my video. Good evening, Mayor and Council. It will be myself and Melissa Bruner from Lita Homes presenting tonight. Myself presenting on the design of the townhouse development, and Melissa presenting on the livability of the units. So I'll start off quickly just from a design point of view. When we started this project, obviously this lot being as irregularly shaped as it was, design considerations that were a must at the beginning were 3-bedroom units to promote family living in this area. We wanted to have a very strong presence along the Murray's Pond pathway as to make that amenity a much stronger and more vibrant, appealing pathway. And the other portion that we wanted to incorporate was a strong presence along Ryder Hesdell Way. And with the property in the shape that it is, the majority of the property is, less than 90 feet in width. And, when you look at that from perspective of townhouse units to parking stalls, et cetera, it becomes very difficult to maneuver a development with the irregular lines of the property. You'll notice along the Murray's Pond pathway, we have met our objective of our setback and do not require the variance there. The variance for the setbacks come strictly due to accessibility. We've had many meetings, including that on site with engineering from the city of Colwood, to discuss the accessibility of a fire truck entering this development. And originally we did not require these setbacks, but as a recommendation in a whole, we decided that by moving building D into the corner of the property slightly, it would allow just that much more accessible room for service vehicles, as Desiree has pointed out. The design aesthetic of this property too, in my opinion, is situated well in the fact that the parking spaces and most of the operating areas of the development are now hidden entirely from public view. So for instance, the 3-unit development along Ryder Hesdell is a natural screen for the parking in behind for the units. The other 9 units around Murray's Pond are a great screen again for the same. And the retaining wall in which we've asked for to make up for the great slope across this property also creates a visual barrier. And with help from Ben Mycroft and hopefully the superintendent of schools, we will be planting on top of that in that area as well to further decrease visibility into that area. It should be noted, the hardest part about this development was not just the irregular shape, but the height in which the property presents its challenges from front to back and from north to south and east to west. So from north to south, we have a total drop on the property of about 4 meters or just over 12 feet. And from south to north, we have a drop over that short 100 feet of just over 9 feet. So it was a very challenging lot. I think we tried our best to design something that was going to be aesthetically pleasing from all angles. And I'll leave it to Melissa from here to kind of explain the livability.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So in creating this project, we really looked to our core focus as a company, and our core focus is building beautiful homes and relationships that stand the test of time. So when we looked at making this project and the livability of this project, we wanted to stay within that core focus and make this project as beautiful as the rest of our portfolio of homes that we have been developing for many years. So this project kind of offers a housing diversity within the area, which is an objective of the OCP, as we understand, and we wanted to create that diversity while still fitting into the overall neighborhood plan. In order to do that, of course, we wanted to incorporate a lot of the landscaping. We wanted to incorporate the fact that, we have this beautiful pond and pathway that people can access. We know that we have a lot of parking, obviously, to take care of, but we tried to hide that. We really tried to make it so that the views from the street, as well as the views from the pond, were aesthetically pleasing, and they made it part of the community and didn't stand out as a parking lot. We're kind of aiming to create a community within a community while being part of the neighborhood as a whole. So as Robert kind of touched on, we wanted to make access and the interaction with the Murray's Pond itself a big part of this development. So you'll see in Block A and Block B, those are the two blocks that line the pond. They have patios that sort of directly access that walking path. So we really wanted an interaction with the surrounding landscape. We wanted to create homes that are desirable for the active communities, for young families, and that those young families, instead of being confined to what is a townhouse development that normally would be very kind of concretey and cold, they would have direct access to the park. They'd have direct access to the walking path. It would be very nice for a young family with, you know, a dog or small children to easily get out and interact with the community as a whole. So we're really aiming to create an addition to the neighborhood and a community within the community by making this development. And that's everything I have.
Thank you very much, Robert and Melissa. I just open it up for questions. Councillor Jensen.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I had the pleasure of walking that lot just this past weekend, in fact, in company with other council members. And boy, my hat goes off to the people that took on the challenge of designing that because it is an awkward shaped lot. I have a lot more comfort with now that I see exactly where the where it is that you want the variances. I do have a question about building number, I guess that's C, 11, 12, and 13 unit there. When I looked at one of the pictures, it shows the vehicles driving in from Ryder Hesdall. Can you tell me how people there will access their garage, please, Robert or Melissa?
Yeah, so in order to meet our parking requirements, we actually had to do some tandem units, and those tandem units fall in building C in both 11 and 12. And those units are actually accessed from behind the unit, not on Ryder Hesdall.
So it was just, I believe, one of the drawings showed the vehicles pointed in that direction, which tweaked me on that. I wondered if they were entering directly from the street. And then as far as the retaining wall, I mean, goodness gracious, it's a parking lot there. And I take great comfort in the fact that these variances really impact nobody other than potentially people who might reside there. And if they choose to reside there, then that's by choice. And I do also give credit to the developer as a whole for not coming forward and asking for a parking reduction, which we often see in developments like this, because I do believe that this area generally has some parking pressures, which have been we've heard about from residents nearby. So kudos to you guys. I did have another question here. And it escapes me right now. It was unclear whether these units were going to be sold on the open market or whether they were going to be rentals. Have we achieved some clarity there, Robert?
I'm going to leave that to Melissa to answer. She's representing Lita Homes.
Okay.
At this point, we plan on strata or creating a strata for this property. And based on the market, when it does get constructed, we will make the final decision on whether that strata is being sold or if it's going to be remained as part of a rental pool.
Okay, I got it. So we haven't got there yet.
No. It's all to do with timing. So let's see how the meeting goes tonight.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Jensen. Councillor Day.
Thank you. Now, your design is based on basically using Murray's Pond kind of as your backyard. And for me, that is somewhat problematic, because when you take a public space and make it your own, it may make other people who are visiting Murray's Pond feel less comfortable. Have you done anything to mitigate or to carefully define that so that it's clear that the public park is a public park and not someone's backyard?
I'll talk from a design point of view. We do and we will have lower fencing along the property line with gates. We also will have a landscaping buffer in between that gate and Murray's Pond pathway. There will also be landscaping behind the gates in the rear yard of these homes. And I just want to address your comment on making Murray's Pond our backyard. The rear yard is very usable for these units, and we presented 3D renderings illustrating what the rear of these units would look like on the lower floor. The integration with Murray's Pond pathway is simply that of accessibility for these units to have an active lifestyle. And I believe Melissa touched on that previously. All of us did a lot of market research before designing these units, including a lot around Vancouver on the seawalls, Victoria. I believe Melissa has a couple more examples here in Victoria, but the relationship of those units to Murray's Pond and the active lifestyle in that area was an important thing for us, not to use it as its backyard, but as just an accessibility thing.
So you presented those renderings here tonight?
No, I presented them for the package that was supposed to be sent out to you. I can screen share those right now as well if you have not seen those.
That would be good to know what you're referring to.
I apologize. I thought those were going to be in the package sent out. So, one sec here. I
have it on my screen if
yeah,
you have
please.
it handy.
You show it? I don't have, yes, please.
Okay. I'm not sure I'm able to share though. It's not giving me that functionality. So that is not helpful.
Amanda, could you give her screen sharing capability? Did you allow that?
I think that you should have it. Let's see. It's on, it should be, are you on a regular laptop?
Yeah.
It should be at the bottom of your screen next to the chat. It should say share screen.
See if it's giving it to me. It's giving me a an error, but maybe. There we go. Okay. No, it's not going to let me. It wants me to quit Zoom before it'll allow the privacy. So I am not able to share that. Apologies.
I've got it. I've got it right here.
Okay.
I found it while I will screen share that right now. And these are, very quick renderings, but I think they will help to make the point. So, these are very quick renderings. We wanted to get something across to council just to kind of illustrate the depth of the backyards in these units. This in no way, shape, or form has been the approved gating, and this will most likely be solid gate. The landscaping outside of Murray's Pond is slightly deeper than this. The lowest point is 3 feet. At the most, it gets to be about 6 or 7. And the siding on the building has not been updated to the version. But what we are showing in these is per unit, we would be having enough room, the doors being back here under this covered area. There'd be enough room for a couch and outdoor sitting area, as well as a landscaped piece on each unit. And then having a gate as access out to the pond pathway. Again, very, very quick rendering. And then, apologies here. And then This would just be showing that we are landscaping that retaining wall as well. I just wanted to quickly put that in there as well. It's a green wall.
Sorry, what kind of wall did you say it was?
The retaining wall, I was just showing you quickly, we're actually making that into a green wall. It will not be a concrete wall. It will be a green retaining wall for the residents that live there.
Okay. Thank you. And we have received some feedback from neighbors in the area who felt that this was just too many units on too small of a location. Did you have anything you would like to say to that?
Sure, I'll speak to that. So we did look at the original zoning for this. It was originally zoned with no variances for 12 units. The reason why we ended up with 13 was because that block C in the front, we really wanted to sort of cover from the street view that there is a significant amount of parking back there. So without those 3 units in the front, and we're not allowed to have a duplex unit there, according to the zoning. So we did have 3 units there, but we really wanted to use that to screen the parking behind and make it more aesthetically pleasing from the street view. So that's how we ended up with 13 over the 12 that would require no variance application.
Thank you. That's good for me.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Day. Any other questions? I just have a couple questions here. It looks like a tight fit. What I consider the back, the side that faces Murray's Pond, it's tight, isn't it? I mean, and you're saying we're compliant? Is that how I'm reading this right now? I just want to confirm this. Desiree, we're compliant?
Yes, we are compliant. So
To the OCP. That's really something. Wow, boy.
So for the minimum
Nothing else like that
requirements-
around the neighborhood at all, is there? I mean, okay. And yeah, the only other thing I just wanted to confirm again was that we are compliant with the OCP as far as parking goes, correct? Compliant.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to confirm that because it looks, yeah, doesn't look quite right. But okay. Any other questions? Nope. Seeing none, someone's going to make the motion. Councillor Jensen. Councillor Jensen's making the motion. Okay. Hold your hand. Any other discussion before I call the question? Okay, I'll call the question. Anyone that is not in agreement with this motion? Yeah, I'm sort of sitting on the fence on this one, to tell you the truth. It's that backyard is really iffy to me. It's just, I don't know if that's the right look there. It's so hard to tell. And you said locally, Melissa, you have something like this someplace? You're muted, Melissa.
We do. When we were looking at this, we were looking at the rail yards in Vic West.
Okay.
So that directly sits on what is considered the busiest commuter path in the sort of Victoria region. And they do have these backyards that are right on that path. We decided to put more of a landscaping buffer in than what they have, but those are very desirable homes for people that are very active and like that ability to step out of their backyard onto a running path or a walking path.
Okay, well, I'll still have the opportunity at council to look, before council to actually look at it. So I'll give it a tentative okay at this point in time. Okay, just Councillor Day is in opposition at this point in time, and we'll move on. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Melissa.
Thank you.
Robert.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, item 5.5, Dennis Carlson. Dennis Carlson. Oh my goodness. You're still here, Dennis. Good to see you.
For a little while.
And you're going to do all the small lot subdivision. I'm looking forward to this. Thanks very much, Dennis. It's over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we could get the slide presentation going. Waiting for Amanda. Thank you. So I'm going to start off by giving a brief background to the initiative and basically how we got here. And then I'm going to turn over the presentation to Lindsay from Dialogue, along with her team. Next slide, Amanda. So just to provide some context, what we're finding over the last few years is that primarily applications for single family dwellings are small lots. And the reasons for that are understandable. The market is becoming increasingly constrained by affordability. And what that is resulting in, as we're seeing with applications, is that the lot widths are becoming reduced and the floor space of the houses is becoming at a premium. Having said that, the market is still trying to accommodate the features of larger lots, particularly providing sufficient parking, and in some cases, secondary suites. Next slide. So from a staff's point of view, it starts to raise some questions about what's the impact of that type of development in terms of livability and neighborhood character. And I should point out, by the way, committee, that this image is not from Colwood. And on the basis of that, we hired Dialogue Design to do an analysis and create draft small lot guidelines, which you're going to see in a few minutes. Next slide, Amanda. So in terms of the official community plan, the official community plan defines small lots as any lot with an area of less than 550 square meters. There is provision within the development permit guidelines within Part 26 intensive residential that relates to the form and character of small lot developments, and also particularly focuses on elements such as on-site parking and on-site privacy, which you can see on the screen in front of you. Is also in the staff report. Next slide, please. So we went and looked at 4 developments that were small lots that have been completed and built over the last few years. Obviously, this includes Royal Bay. It also includes Seafield Road, the development that was done in Regency Place, and the development that was done on Painted Road. As you can see, they all generally, in terms of minimum lot areas, fall around the 300 square meter mark. Lot width ranges quite a bit, generally around from 9 to 10 meters. The 12 meter ones for Seafield Road and Regency Place, as noted in the table on your screen, is mainly in regards to if they're proposing to do a secondary suite, then they need a wider lot. They also have to provide 2 parking spaces for the house and then an additional parking space for the suite. And the regulations around the siting of that parking kind of varies zone to zone, but generally it says 2 in the garage, and then you can count 1 outside of that for the secondary suite. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, following direction from committee to council regarding these draft guidelines that are being presented tonight, we will be holding a developer workshop at which we will be presenting the draft guidelines. As you heard from Mr. Mycroft tonight, they've already had some comments about this, and we anticipate that we will have more of a discussion with them about their reactions and thoughts and how we could possibly improve these guidelines. Following that, we will be coming back to committee with the results of that input from the development community. And then we will present the proposed amendments to the OCP in terms of the intensive residential development permit guidelines for council's consideration. Next slide, please. So the staff recommendation, as I've just mentioned, is that those amendments regarding lot width, siting of on-site parking, front yard landscaping, secondary suite outdoor space, and on-site storage be provided for council consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And at this point, I will turn over the presentation to Lindsay and her team from Dialogue.
Thank you, Dennis. Actually, Amit's going to start our presentation, but I will share screen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Amit Price Patel. I'm a senior architect and urban designer with Dialogue, and I'm here with Lindsay Freyet-Yerke, who is a associate urban designer and planner. And today we'll be talking about the small lot design guidelines. And the purpose, the approach that we took with these guidelines was really to think about this in terms of community building, about creating a really great pedestrian environment, accommodating parking, accommodating storage and other needs, and to make communities that will really stand the test of time. For the presentation, we will give you an overview of the process, talk about some urban design analysis and research we've done of existing precedent projects, talk about post-occupancy surveys that we did with existing residents and the engagement related to that, show the design draft guidelines that we've developed, and then talk about next steps. So I'll hand it over to Lindsay to talk about the process and the engagement pieces.
So this is our process diagram. It shows that we're just ending phase one, which took place spring to winter. In this process, of phase one, we underwent a background review and urban design analysis and phase one survey and stakeholder engagement, as was noted. I'll start off with the urban design analysis, or introducing what we observed in these 4 developments that were recently developed in Culvert. So here you see Painter Road. Painter Road is quite a unique development in that it applies multiple approaches to parking and siting. So you have, in these images at the top, you see there are front access lots with double garages and 2 parking spaces. There are also lots that have front access with a shared driveway to the rear where parking is located. So there are, of course, benefits and trade-offs to both of these approaches. The front access lots have larger backyards. The lots that have a shared access lane have a good street presence for pedestrians. There's fewer interruptions to the sidewalk and good street presence from the home in terms of habitable use and also front garden, but they have limited green space in the backyard. Regency Place is another development where you see there's actually quite a bit of paving in this area and more challenges with the balancing of paving and green space. All of these lots are front access lots. You can see in the image in the top, there's a difficulty of achieving parking for suites in addition to parking for the main home within a 2-car driveway. So the driveway becomes quite wide and takes over that pedestrian zone. There's also no sidewalks provided in this development. Along Seafield Road, they do quite a good job of balancing the public realm and parking needs on site. Driveways accommodate 2 cars and garages are limited to 1. So there's about a 50% use of habitable use and vehicle use in the front. And there's a good proportion of garden to driveway. You can see in the aerial just how tight some of these lots are becoming in comparison to the historic lots. In Royal Bay, there's a mixture of both front and rear access lots. The front access lots are quite successful from their pedestrian experience perspective. One of the challenges that they do have is off the laneway, vehicles or people are tempted to park their vehicles adjacent to the garage. And so that can limit the space in the lane and create challenges for garbage pickup and emergency vehicle access. In addition to undergoing this urban design analysis, we wanted to understand people's experience of living in small lots. So there's only so much we can see through that physical analysis, but how do people like living here? So we sent out a survey request to all 150 addresses. We sent it out in early spring and it was open through the summer, and we sent a reminder in the fall. We had about 30 responses out of 150. We asked people about their experience with parking. We asked simply, is there adequate parking for my household? 52% of people had agreed or definitely agreed that there is adequate parking. 8% of people didn't really have an opinion either way. And we dug into this question of parking a little further. We wanted to know how many vehicles people own. The majority of homes have 2 vehicles. We asked how many vehicles are regularly parked in the garage. 64% of people regularly park 1 vehicle in the garage. And we also asked how many vehicles are typically parked in the street. 50% of people don't park any vehicles in the street. 40% of people noted that they might park 1 in the street. So some people are choosing to park in the driveway, but the garage is generally the majority of where people are parking at least 1 vehicle. It should be noted that some people reported having 1 vehicle parking it in the garage and there still being 4 or more vehicles on the street. So there was a bit of a misunderstanding from them of the question. We also wanted to understand their experience with storage space, particularly for bicycles, outdoor gear, and seasonal items, those items that might typically take up a garage space. 41% of people agreed or definitely agreed that they had sufficient storage space. So there was some room for improvement in this area. And regarding outdoor space, 64% of people are satisfied with their current outdoor space. So they're doing pretty well. And just quickly, I'll walk through the demographics of who we heard from, so you can understand a little bit more about the types of families and that are living in these homes. The majority, 45% of homes have just 2 people living in them. 79 or 80% of homes have just 1 unit that is reported. 70% of homes just have 2 people with a driver's license. And nearly 50% of homes don't have any children under the age of 18. So we drafted a set of guidelines and we shared them, as was noted, we shared them with developers who have been undergoing small lot developments in Culvert. We shared the planning process with them, the outcomes of the survey, and the draft guidelines for discussion. We got a lot of really useful feedback from them, including direction on ideas for how to refine or expand on storage options and parking, particularly off the laneway, such as having 0 side yard setback on rear access garages. So I'm going to now hand it back over to Amit, who will share the draft updated guidelines that followed that engagement.
Thanks, Lindsay. So these are the draft guidelines, and the purpose of them is to supplement the intensive residential development permit area guidelines to provide a clear design expectation for builders and developers, and to provide guidance on lot width, site parking, open space, and storage space. Next. Taking a look at lot width, the minimum lot width currently allowed is 9.15 meters minimum. And to have a you can have two parking spaces that are accommodatable on a single family dwelling with a street side parking configuration with one space in the garage and one space out on the street. As an alternative, you can have two spaces out on the lane. And we're showing a planter buffer there to provide some privacy and screening of parking there. Another configuration is a 10-meter minimum lot, and that's accommodating two side-by-side parking spaces on the street side there. And as an alternative, with an optional secondary suite, for a third parking space, there's a lane access configuration with two cars in a garage and then an optional on surface parking space. And then with 11-meter minimum lots, you can have a single family dwelling with a suite in both a front access lot configuration and a lane access lot configuration. The third suite parking space would be happening on the surface in the driveway in the front configuration, and then adjacent to the garage in the lane access lot configuration.
One thing that I would like to add is, which I forgot to mention, one thing that we heard from our stakeholders was that it's challenging to provide suites because it's difficult to make the parking work. So by providing opportunities to make parking work, we can then provide opportunities to include suites in homes.
The other thing I wanted to note here is that the percentages that you see along the bottom there are showing the amount of driveway in the front yards. And as you saw from some of the precedents, the amount of driveway that ends up happening in some of the front yards gets to be quite substantial, which impacts the pedestrian environment and the amount of landscaping that's possible there. Lot widths, this is just a summary of the information on the previous slide that shows the different lot widths, the lot types, and the access for them, number of units per different lot type, number of cars in garages, and the number of uncovered parking spaces. One important consideration when designing sidewalks and the public realm is how driveways are interacting with that. And by putting driveways adjacent to each other, it allows more space for continuous landscaping along the streets and larger areas of landscaping. So that is one of our recommendations, is to have the maximum front yard setback of a street-facing garage only be 6 meters. So there's only one car that can park in a driveway rather than multiple cars stacked behind each other in a tandem configuration. And then also ganging driveways together so that there's larger areas of landscaping. Next. For lane access lots, we are recommending that there is a 2-car garage permitted off the laneway with an optional surface parking space for suites, and that the setback from the laneway to the face of the garage only be 1 meter to prevent cars from parking in front of the garage door and blocking the laneway and blocking emergency vehicle and garbage truck access. And then a add-on onto this could be combining 2 garages for 2 separate parcels adjacent to each other to provide more backyard open space, as you can see in the top right plan there. Secondary suite parking, as we discussed before, there are several options here, with a 10-meter wide lot having an optional suite parking space along the lane adjacent to the garage. On the front access lot, having a surface space on the driveway, and then for a 11-meter wide lot, having the surface space adjacent to the garage along the lane. Paving and parking character. we think it's quite important to have permeability for the paving to help mitigate stormwater issues and provide more potential landscaping area as well. Landscaping throughout can help buffer driveways and blank walls of garages as well, and provide some privacy between adjacent parcels. Next. Private outdoor space where secondary suites do exist, having dedicated private outdoor open space for them that is approximately 1 meter by 3 meters minimum size. And the purpose of that is to provide a sense of privacy and spatial definition, and storage can be used as a way to provide some privacy as well for these private open spaces. Bulk storage space. Often garages are used for storage, so we want to provide people an option for that. Some configurations that we've explored include a standalone shed or a structure in the backyard, as you can see in the plan diagram at the top left. That same footprint could be added on to the main mass of the building to act as a storage space, and can also provide some privacy from adjacent neighbors. And on the next slide, based on developer feedback, we are proposing that some of the outdoor storage can happen in the garage, a standalone garage coming off of a laneway. And that storage can happen on the side of the cars, as side of the car parking, as you can see in the left diagram there, or could potentially happen in a mezzanine space above the garage, above the cars. So as Lindsay mentioned before, we are currently at the report to council step of phase 1, and would love to get your feedback so that we can begin refining these and getting them finalized. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
Oops, sorry, Councillor Parkinson. I gotta unmute myself.
That's okay. We're all just learning. It's only been 2 years. So, we all heard, and hopefully you guys were listening to the presentation from Habitat for Humanity, who talks about how they make homes affordable. And here we seem to be going in the wrong direction, or the opposite direction. More requirements, more this, more that. Did anybody look at dumbing it down? Like no garages? How about no driveways? How about everybody parks on the street? Did we look at that as a way to sort of reduce the cost of these things that again, I think we've heard are now north of $1 million? Is there merit to go down that path? And also, I guess, you've obviously done a good job of looking at Colwood and what's happened and talk to people in Colwood, but there's a whole province at least, and probably a whole country or 2 countries looking at what to do with this. What lessons should we be learning from similar municipalities who have stumbled or successes in their small lot guidelines? So I think we may rightly be criticized by saying this is all very nice what we're proposing here, and it's jacking up the cost of housing even on the small lots even more. And that's, again, it's not a bad thing if that's what people want, but perhaps we should also be looking at, if people want a range, do we do a subdivision where everybody parks on the street? I got a brother in Vancouver who lives on a 30-foot lot or a 33-foot lot. I go visit him, I find a place to park. I have to look around a little bit once in a while, but it can be done. And so he doesn't have a driveway or a garage, and that saves him some money and also creates more livable space on his lot. So I just wonder if we've approached this from a broad enough look, or if we just looked at what about what's happening in Colwood and what's good and what's not good. It's my question. I don't know who wants to take it.
I got this. So through the chair to Councillor Parkinson, much of what we're entertaining here is after discussions with the market. And the market can certainly speak to this better than I can, but I suspect the ability to provide product without a garage would probably be or on-site parking for that matter, would be an extremely difficult product for them to market. Not to say that in certain circumstances it may be appropriate. In regards to no parking and let everybody park on the street, I'm sure council is aware of the repeated comments we've had from Royal Bay residents about issues with on-street parking. So it's not something I would advise council to pursue, but if directed, we could certainly look at that as an option.
But remember, Dennis, if you don't have driveways off the street, then you've got twice as much street to park on in front of your lot. If you've got an 11-meter lot with 6-meter driveway, you've only got 5 meters to park. Whereas if you've got no driveway, you've got 11 meters to park. So there are some balances, and I don't have the answer, but I just, it's hard when at the beginning of the meeting we get wrapped to find ways to make things more affordable, and we get here and we have these lovely design standards that look to me like they're making things less affordable.
Thanks very much, Councillor Parkinson. Councillor Day?
Thank you. Yeah, it's where to start. It's a very difficult question. And I would remind everybody that we're trying to create a livable community, not just an affordable community. We need to meet the needs. Now, currently, the way the world works in the Capital Regional District, if you want to have a good job, you're going to need a good car probably to get there, or be very fit, or, sure, there are the outliers, but the vast majority of people need a car to make their life work, whether they're taking their kids to daycare or they're going to work or they're retired. They still got to volunteer for all the things that we need them to do. And I just want to question a little bit I really do not want to be rude whatsoever, either to our developers or to our great staff who are trying to wrestle with these difficult problems and help us. But we've had an awful lot of input over the last 20 years, both on small lots, on driveways, and on parking. And it's some of the older communities that are not tight, not small lots, where we've had some of the biggest problems. Aloha was one of the areas where we've heard an awful lot from people about parking. And it's because older homes have had suites put in them. We've also had a lot of conversations from some of the small lot subdivisions that were built in the early 2000s. And the developers said at that time, people don't want to have this big yard to look after. They just want a small yard to look after. And they built some lovely homes. And then people moved in who have 5 cars, and 4 of them are parked on the street. And that is the reality that all of the neighbors are dealing with. And then there's, having the wedding party or the grad reunion or any other event that you want to have, and where are people going to park so that they can get together. So the livability is really important. And when we get it wrong and it spills out onto the streets, the affordability goes down for everybody else who's paying to maintain those streets. So, I don't think that all the taxpayers of Colwood should be paying to make parking spaces for people to park in. That I don't think makes Culvert affordable in the long term either. So somehow we have to find this careful mix. And I'm really hopeful, and I would like to know from staff, when are they going to involve our public? Because it started with and seems to be ending with developer input. And I think that our citizens need to be offered equal opportunities to have input. Is there a plan to engage citizens?
Do you have a response to that, anyone?
I don't see, I'm not sure where Dennis went, and he would be the best person to answer.
Carrie, please.
Oh, Carrie, go ahead.
Hi, sorry about that. Dennis just let me know that he got kicked out of the screen, so he's trying to sign back in. Can I ask you to repeat that question?
I'm just wondering if there is a plan to engage our citizens. So far, the developers have been consulted first, and then it's come to council. And now the only thing I see in the report is more developer input.
Absolutely. Through the chair, thank you for that question. We have started out by seeking input for those who currently own and live in small lot units in Culvert. So that's the survey is based on the community to start with. Our next step is to go back out and carry out an engagement session. It will likely need to be virtual due to the current situation we're in. It will be open to developers as well as to the community. So I hope that answered your question. We are not just identifying developers in the next step.
Okay, thank you. So there has been a lot of input over the years from residents about parking issues, and it seems to have not been recorded somehow. I don't know if that's just because of the way it came in, but I think it is really important to engage the community, because there isn't a street that I drive down that I don't see issues with parking on. Whether it's, you know, during the snow event and wondering, are the plows going to be able to get through this street or otherwise. Also, there is a large percentage of the percentages that were presented in the report. When you add up the smaller percentages, there's a lot of people parking on the streets. And that doesn't really come forward in the way the numbers are presented. You know, they are parking one car in their garage. Most people have two cars. So there is either one on the street or one in the driveway. And that is the reality of our situation. And I think the livability of the units is going to be impacted by COVID as well. Because as we're going through making smaller lots, we are also now putting people closer together. You know, if there's a designated space for a suite outside of a home, they are more than likely impacted either by a neighbor or by the homeowner who also resides in the home. So those close quarters and the concerns of smoke and other issues, barbecue, whatever else happens in life, the smaller we make our footprint, the less livable some of those spaces are going to become, just because of the nature of the world we're in. So I'm advocating for better engagement of our existing residents who will be impacted by this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Jensen. Councillor Jensen, you're muted.
Sorry, I just finished saying I'm going to be really concise, which I guess I'm not now. So Can someone tell me the 9, 10, and 11 meter lot configuration? What's the intention there? Because I mean, if we're posing those as options, I can't see a developer coming in and say, "Hey, I'd love to build the 11 meter option." I mean, is there requirements on this, or what? Is it all to do with the configurations?
I can answer that through the chair. So the intention here is to provide staff in the development community with some guidance around our expectations in terms of what they're proposing for subdivision. Currently, right now, with the exception of the ones that we illustrated, and those are actually good examples. So if an applicant wanted to come in and do a development with no suites, we would steer him towards perhaps the 9.15 or the 10 meter wide lots. However, if they wanted to include suites, we would advise them that those lots would need to be wider, approaching more the 11 meter wide lots. So it's really to get the developers thinking about what it is they want to provide in terms of product and how they're going to provide it, that in a way that meets council's intentions.
Sounds great. It strikes me when we're talking about this, we seem to be talking about it several years after the cat's already out of the bag or the horse is out of the barn. I'm out of animal metaphors, but basically, I like the idea of putting the genie back in the bottle, another terrible metaphor, I guess, here, and actually providing a framework for future development. So I really like the concept. I like some of the designs. I think they're pretty cool. I love the idea of having a little bit of space for a renter. And it struck me, Councillor Parkinson, to one of your comments, I believe the affordability here comes with the flexibility to have a suite, whether that's 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, the size of the lot, what have you. But I love the idea of having some of these configurations and having them available for developers to chew on at the start, as opposed to them having to make something up. So I like all that. Thank you. And a street with no actual parking. Councillor Parkinson, once again, I made another note, not to rebut what you're saying, but I do believe that creates a sense of entitlement. I think we saw it recently where people start putting up no parking signs right in front of their home because they're entitled to that spot because they don't have a spot. So that's their spot. And that I struggle with that. I firmly believe that the street belongs to the entire community. And it's our street or the community street, not someone, one resident. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Metaphor. Any other questions or comments? You guys needed some cheering up here. You guys are looking awful tired looking. So can I get a motion then, please? Staff motion, Councillor Jensen. Okay, thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor, or all those opposed, I should say. Make it easy. Now, Councillor Day is in opposition. Okay, thank you. Move on to the next item. Thank you very much, everyone, for participating in that. Thank you. And 5.6, Culvert Corners, Building 3 encroachments. If I can get Dennis to introduce the item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As brought to our attention in the preparation of a strata plan for a building relative to Culvert Corners, they identified 2 minor building encroachments, which are shown in the staff report. One is a roof overhang, and the other one is a parapet encroachment. And both of those encroach into the Culvert Crescent right-of-way, and accordingly will require an encroachment agreement. And the recommendation from staff is that council authorize staff to enter into and register an encroachment agreement regarding those encroachments into the right-of-way. Mr. Taylor from Polaris Land Surveying is also available if he wants to have any additional comments or if committee has any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for staff on this? Councillor Councillor Jensen, pardon me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quite frankly, this seems like a bit of housekeeping to me, and I'm happy to move the motion. I don't require a more detailed explanation. I don't know if everybody else does.
Councillor Day, comment on the motion?
Yes, thank you. I don't understand why this happened, and I don't understand why it cost them nothing.
Someone from staff, Dennis, do you have an answer to that?
Through the chair, I'll defer to Mr. Taylor in terms of how this happened. In terms of the cost, they will have to cover the usual costs associated with registering the agreement at Land Title.
Thank you. When this building was designed back in 2017, 2018, somewhere in that vicinity, the architect represented the roof overhanging the boundary, and all of us through the process missed it. So Colwood staff missed it, we missed it as surveyors, and so essentially the city of Colwood has issued a development permit allowing this encroachment. They've issued a building permit allowing the encroachment, and it wasn't until the building was built and we came out and to do the survey work where we started to locate the extent of the building and actually realized that this encroachment had been designed. So we checked back through all the process and confirmed that sure enough, it's there on the original drawings. It clearly shows the roof overhang, and we just all missed it. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it worked.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Day?
I guess.
Thank you. Councillor Parkinson?
Yeah, first a shout out to Bruce, long time no see. Trust all is well. What were you aiming for? Was it a zero lot line thing, or was there actually a setback that you encroached on as well?
It was a zero lot line.
Okay, well, you know what? It's no big deal. Honey's a major part of our community. If we can help him with this, I certainly will support this motion. Let's get her done and let everybody move on. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this? I'll lower all the hands, and motions made by Councillor Jensen. And if I can have a show of hands for those that oppose the motion. Seeing none, the motion is approved. Okay, next item. My favorite one, not really. 5.7. City of Langford referral, rezoning amendment to CD4 zone, Olympic View. Carrie, I guess you're going to introduce this nasty one. Thank you.
Good evening, through the chair. Thank you very much. I do not have a PowerPoint this evening. However, I will provide a brief overview. The City of Langford has provided a referral to the City of Colwood with regard to a proposed rezoning application for Olympic View that would apply to the Langford portion only. The application includes several amendments to the CD4 Langford zone to increase the density from 461 units to 1,000 units, as well as other increase to the number of hotel rooms, the increase in FAR for retail use, as well as open space from 15% to 30%. The proposal includes other changes to the regulatory siting requirements in the zone and proposes to eliminate the zoning areas that would restrict certain uses to certain areas of the area plan. So the staff report includes a brief history of Colwood's and Langford's background relative to Olympic View. as well as the sub-area plan and City of Culvert zoning is attached to the report. A copy of the referral from the City of Langford is included. Currently, to date, staff have asked for a traffic impact assessment from the City of Langford, and we have reviewed the sanitary sewer considerations, in which Langford's response was that sewer will be funneled through Langford and West Shore Environmental. So the intent of this referral is to provide committee with the opportunity to curate a response and a recommendation for council as a response back to the City of Langford with respect to the City of Langford's application process. I'm happy to take any questions you might have. It is my understanding that Peter Duswager, the developer of Olympic View, is available online tonight as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carrie. I'll open the discussions for questions or comments. We'll start off with Councillor Day.
Thank you. In the report, it notes that Langford, as well as doubling the density, is increasing the amount of parks and open space from 15% to 30%. Will that realize anything new in Olympic View, or is that simply going to be counting more of the golf course towards the green space requirement?
Through the chair, I don't have a direct response to this question, but I can certainly find out from the City of Langford how they define their open space based on a review of the Olympic View area plan. The parks proposed look like they are matching that sub-area plan.
Okay, thank you. It also indicates in the report moving away from the commercial, I think it's nodes or village area, to the commercial being throughout the development. Would that allow commercial development throughout the Colwood portion as well?
Through the chair, no, it would not. This application is only for the City of Langford portion of the land.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Day. Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Chair. I guess the concern I have here is it seems to bring to light that a lot of the work done in the joint memo and the decisions made based on that are outdated at present. That the this proposal and others in Langford supersede what was considered or expected at the time of the joint memo, and the joint memo was used as the basis for rezonings in South Colwood. And I think, quite frankly, we have to look at it and say we may have significant issues coming at us in the way of traffic concerns down the road. That certainly seems to be what we're being told in the little report we got from Bunt, which they acknowledge as preliminary, and that there's more work needed. I crafted a motion that I think may form the basis of a good discussion here by council. As I said, I will certainly share my share of the blame. The joint memo, I felt, was telling us we were setting ourselves up with a lot of work to do, but a manageable amount and predictable results. And I think what we're finding out now was that the joint memo was not considering this or other developments in Langford. So maybe if it's appropriate, Chair, maybe we could have that motion flashed up as a point of discussion, or do you want to discuss?
I'll come back to you, Councillor Parkinson, on that. Okay. Mr. Duswager, do you have a response to that? I see your hand up. Peter?
Yeah, our traffic consultant, Tyler Thompson is on the line too, so he could probably speak better to the traffic component. I just wanted to address Councillor Day's question about the green space. And yes, it's substantially changed. I think we've substantially changed the overall master plan for Olympic View back in 2018 in response to Colwood's OCP. And it's reflected in the plan and the street designs that we have submitted and have been accepted by Colwood and Langford. And we are going to start the development of the Langford side of it to be consistent with the look and feel of the Colwood side.
Okay, thanks very much, Peter.
And I can respond through the chair to Councillor Parkinson. Tyler Thompson from Bunton Associates Engineering. I've been involved with this work for quite some time, including the development of the joint memo. And at the time of the joint memo, it was stated that certainly even at build out in the 2040 scenario, we were nearing kind of reserve capacity. Since the time of the joint memo, there have been some kind of new assumptions or new development densities considered in certain locations, including in Langford, also down at South Latoria, as well as other parcels of development in Langford, not just Olympic View, and now with this additional density in Olympic View itself. So what I can say about it now is we are in the process of completing our updated TIA, and we don't have all of our findings completely resolved yet. But just some of the things that we wanted to caution about is that the intersection, the new roundabout proposed at Latoria and Veterans Memorial Parkway will see some added pressures expectedly at certain locations, most notably on the north leg, so the southbound approach. Once all these densities are considered, that southbound approach does go over capacity and experiences further delay, as well as on the northbound approach with additional densities in Olympic View. The actual road network in Olympic View is set up to handle the traffic even with the added density. It's just at that particular node. However, the overall level of service for the intersection is still at acceptable thresholds, even with all of this new density since the joint memo. So what does that mean? Level of service D, which is what it was in the joint memo, as an overall, meaning that delays would be around 50 seconds or less average delay per vehicle. The delays on the north leg, so the southbound approach, and on the south leg, the northbound approach, are beyond that and becoming more pressured. But there certainly are some mitigating measures that we could add to the current design of the roundabout, particularly for the south leg. And it's actually quite a simple fix. So in order to ameliorate all of the delay and capacity issues on the south leg, you would just need to add a very short section of a northbound right lane heading from Olympic View onto Latoria. And that would bring the delay down to below acceptable levels, as well as capacity, and the capacity would be fine. However, the north leg, so the southbound approach, does actually still have capacity issues because it's already designed with 2 lanes entering into it. So the only things that could be done possibly to ameliorate that is looking at additional capacity, maybe on other corridors, particularly for that southbound movement, southbound left movement. So overall, the intersection we're finding is still operating at acceptable levels as agreed upon in the terms of reference we developed with the City of Colwood and the City of Langford for this study. It's just the particular movements that we need to get a better handle on how to address those moving forward in the future.
But that's not what it says in your draft memo, right? That was sent to council. that's not what it says.
So that, again, that was preliminary draft memo that was, well, it was internal. It did make its way, it did make its way out. And that's fine. But after looking at it in further detail today with my team, we honed in on those particular issues that were being observed. And we found that these were, in fact, the overall intersection wasn't over capacity. It's particular movements. And these particular movements, especially the northbound from Olympic View, can be ameliorated. It's that one southbound movement that cannot.
And what do you mean by that? Just that one quick term. Sorry, I just, because you were speaking here.
Yeah,
you said that you used this term, nearing reserve capacity.
Yeah, that was what we had said in the joint memo.
Okay.
So there was, a certain amount of capacity under the performance thresholds that had been set with the city of Culvert. And so at that time, even then we were, nearing that. Now on certain movements, we are above that. So on the southbound movement, we are above capacity. On the northbound movement, we are above capacity. If we make the small tweak to the northbound movement of adding, it's about a 10 or 15 meter long northbound right turn lane. So it should be relatively straightforward and easy to add into the design. We'll have the WSP have a look at that and see if that's indeed true. But we don't at this point in time have a particular solution to address the southbound capacity issue. It's 4 laning of Veterans Memorial Parkway is something that will take a lot of the additional traffic. But you've always got the actual intersections as nodes that filter and control that with the turning movements. Carindale, even in the future, will be at capacity, but it's not showing to be over capacity. It's once you get down to the roundabout, that southbound approach is coming to be close to, or to be over capacity.
Councillor Jensen. You're muted.
Yeah, thanks. It took me a second there. I don't have a metaphor to get started here, but I'm sure one will come up along the way. I'm trying to follow a lot of this, and I appreciate some of the clarity, Tyler. But how do we extrapolate the Colwood side of the border with the density that's coming on the Langford side and achieve a level of comfort to the degree where we can move things forward? I'm troubled to hear that this double lane roundabout is the design has some challenges. Maybe we need a triple lane roundabout.
Yeah, no, I think, well, that's a good point. I think what we need to do is look at other municipalities in the region and in Metro Vancouver. When urban development occurs, that reserve capacity, as people are used to the patterns of driving everywhere, wherever they go for all their trip purposes, that becomes more challenging to do. And what happens naturally when capacity is reached is that, people will make decisions to change their travel behaviors. Municipalities make decisions to not add capacity after a certain point. We don't want to be.
It concerns me that you're actually discussing as part of the solution some of our other routes through Colwood as easing the pressure on that location before we've even really gone to the design and the detailed design and build phase. So I am going to reserve my thoughts a little bit, Mr. Chair, and I would like to hear what Councillor Parkinson has to say, and perhaps some of his motion addresses some of the things that I'm thinking. So I'll hopefully you can come back to me at some point after Councillor Parkinson's finished.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Parkinson?
Yeah, it is concerning that we're hearing about these issues already, that, and I hear what you're saying about the roundabout, and I suspect you're right. I just think we have to, at this point, we have to catch our breath and not make decisions based on what we know today, but what we think is going to happen in the future. I mean, is Langford done rezoning? Is that, if we designed this thing and added that 15 meters of widening on the northbound leg or whatever it is that the end, or is it, are we going to be here 6 months or a year from now finding that, well, no, there's more traffic coming and there's more issues. And so, it's a real challenge, that Langford development, if it impacts roads in Colwood, as Colwood development impacts in Langford, what do? We get to a point where Langford develops like crazy, sends a bunch of traffic our way, kicks up our need to do road projects. We don't have the money in our DCC pot or wherever it may come from to pay for those roads. I don't want, the joint memo sounds to me like it was done based on some assumed development numbers in Langford that are already superseded. And the ink's hardly dry on the joint memo. Let's not take today's memo and make the same mistake. What we need to look at is what is a likely long-term growth pattern in Langford, as opposed to, okay, we know this today, we'll assume that's the end and carry on, and if it's not. So I think we need to take some time here and really figure out what's going on. And I'm pleased to hear that you've got some potential solutions. Look hard, find a solution where you don't need to recommend 4-laning Machosen Road, because that one just scares the crap out of me. That's certainly not in my crystal ball anywhere. So we have to be careful there. So, as I said, I've got that motion to address a number of things whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Chair.
Tyler, you wanted to say something back here then?
I think so. I think I just want to clarify that the findings of our study are inclusive of not just now adding density in Langford. It's also density that's being allowed to be contemplated from developments in Colwood, in South Colwood, according to the OCP. So, for example, South Latoria, contemplating additional commercial development densities, and to my understanding, Royal Beach as well. And these densities weren't contemplated in the joint memo. The joint memo was a point in time, and we were informed by all of the development, including information we received from the city about potential development. And we went to the developers, asked, what is your realistic target for development? And that's all we could base it off of at that time. So the winds have changed a little bit for whatever reason in various parcels, and now we're looking at additional densities there, and additional densities mean additional pressures. While there was some reserve capacity, there wasn't enough to handle all of it. But those particular issues that I'm talking about aren't the cause. So that southbound approach, those movements are primarily headed to the east. They're not headed to or from Langford. So I just wanted to clarify that it's not just, it kind of all layers on together to add up to more traffic overall, but it's not just because of development in Langford.
Okay, not seeing any other hands right now. Councilor Parkinson, we'll go back to you in your proposed motion, please.
I don't think I need to read that. I think it's all there. That's only half of it. I think that's the first page of it. Yeah. I mean, my concern is, and frankly, again, I'll share my share of the blame here. The joint memo I felt was telling us what the traffic looked like and what was happening and what roadworks we needed to do to accommodate all that. and already we're seeing we need more. I think we need to understand that before we go any further. I mean, Langford's going to do what it's going to do in the best interests it sees for its citizens, but we have to do the same for us. So basically just asking for a little bit of time, and we need to get some more work done. I'm not sure how we'll do that.
Mr. Diswager, do you want to make a comment here? And then I'll go to Councillor Day right after.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair. I just wanted to note that in that joint memo, we did include all of the densities that were at the time in Langford as well as Colwood in Olympic View. So there's 456 units in Colwood and 461 in Langford under our current zoning at Olympic View. And it was part of the joint memo. And what we are doing right now is studying increasing densities in both municipalities.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Day?
Thank you. I just want to be very clear. I think that all avenues in Colwood are going to have to be investigated for how we might increase capacity on all our roads. But I don't want us to bear the responsibility for Langford's increases in density. They also have other routes other than Veterans Memorial Parkway that they could be accessing. So I just don't want to see it get put on us to manage all of the traffic and left essentially holding the bag.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comment. Mr. Diswager?
Through the chair, I just wanted to add that we are in our first phase in Langford, adding a connection through Gwendolyn and Klahani Road to Latoria. So there is an option for people in Langford at Olympic View to head down Latoria to Happy Valley and out that way.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, what I heard through the grapevine was that we're causing just as much traffic, and they weren't ever consulted on going from Veterans onto the highway through Langford. So I just heard that. So, anyways, Mr. Thompson, Tyler.
Yeah, just thanks. Just adding to Peter's comment about that the infrastructure that's planned for easing pressures on the Langford side we've been informed that it's included in our study, that traffic signal at Klahani and Latoria, which should be built in 2022, we understand, as well as a new signal at Happy Valley and Latoria. So, those are two things that they're doing immediately to help ease pressures on Latoria in that western half. But as far as can be seen, there's no widening of roads considered there. I don't know if they require them yet, but it's just the natural, where people want to be heading. If they're heading to downtown Langford and they're on Happy Valley, they're going to head up Happy Valley. But if they're headed to downtown Victoria, they're probably going to make their way to Veterans Memorial Parkway. It all depends on having those route choices and options, and a lot of people that live in either municipality don't necessarily see it that way because of the way that the boundaries are and how the roads lay out. Sometimes when you're on Veterans, you're in Colvin. Sometimes you're in Langford. It's tricky. I happen to live off of Latoria, just inside Langford, and I spend most of my time in Culvert. So except for at my house. Anyways, I just wanted to add that a little bit.
Okay, thank you. Carrie?
Through the chair, there's a few things I'd like to mention. As this referral is specific to the Langford portion of OB, I did want to highlight that the consideration for South Colwood traffic was brought about with the rezoning of Royal Beach and Latoria South, and captured within the development agreement is a requirement to reevaluate the joint memo every 3 years, I believe, and that would be coming up in 2023. Further to that, every consideration for a rezoning application anywhere in Colwood requires a traffic impact assessment, which is then fed into our traffic consideration, and any improvements or requirements would be addressed by the developer of a particular development. So rest assured, we do require traffic impact assessments for all rezonings, and they will feed into the Colwood traffic consideration. So I hope that sort of gives you a fuller picture of other applications throughout Colwood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on Councillor Parkinson's motion? No, not seeing any. I'll call the question then right now. All those opposed to Councillor Parkinson's motion? Councillor Day is opposed. Okay, that's the only person that I see. Okay, lower your hand. Was there another motion that you wanted to make, Councillor Parkinson, or was that it?
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. And staff understands the motion? Okay, perfect. Okay, it's not as hard as I thought, but it actually enraged me, to tell you the truth, but I calmed down quite a bit, knowing that it was a draft memo. Item 5.8, 2023, pardon me, 2021 Annual Approving Officers Report, Summary of Land Assets. Carrie, if you could introduce and present your item.
Thank you, through the chair. I do not have a PowerPoint, so I will just provide you with a brief overview of the report. This is our annual summary of land assets, which is fed into the city's asset management program and only addresses land, but not the infrastructure within that land. So for the 2021 year, the city approved 111 fee simple lots and 85 strata lots. Other highlights in the report include road and park dedication. So to give you a bit of a comparable, both road and park is around 40,000 square meters that have been dedicated to the city. So for road, this is the equivalency of just over 6 soccer pitches. And for park dedication, this is just under the equivalency of 6 soccer pitches. So just a few facts there. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Jensen.
No questions. I'll move receipt of that.
Okay. Discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those opposed to the motion? Seeing none, motion's passed. Thank you very much. Need a motion for adjournment. Councillor Jensen, you won. You won the lottery. Councillor Day, sorry, was that just a motion to adjourn?
Yeah,
or?
Going to adjourn, that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. Talk to you soon.
Night all.